Everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. Got 3 questions, gonna jump right in. What is the definition of insanity? Okay, kind of got a two-parter to that, I guess, because whenever I hear it phrased exactly like that, I think of the statement, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that bothers me because I really like that phrase. I think it's a great way to break people out of bad routines, to get them to actually think about how their habits can have a long-term effect on their actual life. But it's also not actual insanity. I mean, it's actually probably the most common thing in the world, really. Think about how many people go into debt around Christmas buying gifts, and then they spend the rest of the year paying it off, and then the very next year they do the exact same thing, and vice versa. People on a regular basis, they have habits. How many people make New Year's resolutions to lose weight, and then they don't do anything actually about it, and then the next year they make the exact same resolution? Are those people crazy? No, they're being foolish, but they're not crazy. So yeah, that's not the definition of insanity, and I know you didn't actually imply that, but the turn of phrase, that's what it made me think of. But real insanity just means a person has behavioral characteristics that make it difficult, if not impossible, for them to function, that damage their ability to adapt to either society, which that kind of turns into a philosophical question, because what if the society is off the rails and crazy, then are well-adjusted people insane? But really, more than anything, it's any kind of behavioral routine or mental characteristic that makes existence difficult, that makes happiness difficult, that makes any kind of normal functioning a problem. So hallucinations, severe mood swings, delusions, things of that sort, those would all constitute insanity. Not so much just making the same mistakes over and over again. In fact, that seems to be more normal than actively improving yourself, sadly. But I think that's changing a bit, though. Hope that answers the question. Let's see. Question number 2. What do you think of unbridled capitalism? For the most part, I think it's... actually, let me rephrase that. I think of capitalism... People have this mistake of thinking that capitalism, which is a purely economic system, is somehow equivalent to a republic or to a democracy or to just anything good. It doesn't have that connotation in reality. It's just an economic system. And similarly, on the other end, you've got people who seem to think that it's just evil, that it's just greedy people exploiting the poor and so forth. But it's a tool. Capitalism is a tool. It's an economic system for us to use how we see fit. A great example. I'm very pro-gun. I'm very pro-knife. Don't lose your life, bend that knife. How did that expression? I've heard all the other variations so much that I can't even remember the original. Anyway. I'm very pro-gun, very pro-knife, but if I were to see a crazy person walking around screaming that they are Charlemagne with a knife, I would think, well, somebody needs to take that knife from them because they're crazy. That doesn't make me anti-knife. That makes me responsible knife, right? Well, similarly, the problem right now that we're facing isn't capitalism. Capitalism is a tool, like a knife. The problem is that our culture has changed dramatically in a way that's not compatible with capitalistic principles, and the increase in government interference, which is not the least bit capitalist, has also had a negative effect. For example, one of the things I constantly hear, one of the big complaints, the actual gap between wealth and poor is increasing. Well, here's my question to that. Where are people learning to be successful? Where are people learning to be wealthy? They're learning in school, right? That's where they're being educated. Who runs schools? The vast majority of schools, at least. It's the government. So the government is teaching children not to be wealthy or successful. It's not teaching them to be responsible. It's not teaching them to be well-adjusted individuals. They're saying, Here, learn this. Learn a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Learn to be a good little cog. Don't compete with Bezos or any of those types. Don't learn to start your own business. Don't learn to take risks. Don't learn to be responsible with your money. Instead, learn the STEM categories. Learn a very, very watered down and strange and altered version of history. And once you graduate, become a cog. That's what they're being taught. They're being taught by the government to not be successful, and then they're blaming capitalism. They're blaming free enterprise for their lack of success. It's kind of funny. I was shocked when I went to college and I found that a lot of my peers didn't know the 3 branches of government. Well, why? Well, they were educated by the government, and the government doesn't want them to know that sort of thing. The government wants them to know their times tables, which is great, very useful. The government wants them to know when the Battle of Waterloo was. That's a little less useful. But the government doesn't want them to learn how to invest their money. The government doesn't want to learn entrepreneurship. They don't want them to learn how to take care of themselves, pay bills, etc. That's why home ec and shop and all those are gone, which is why so many people my generation, I don't know how to adult. They need to take adulting classes. They're not taught those sorts of things because that's not useful for a slave caste. So a lot of the problems we're seeing with capitalism has a direct correlation to the way our culture has changed and become more materialistic. See, that's the funny thing, is there's this direct association with capitalism and consumerism. Those aren't the same thing. To model the proper behavior, in my opinion, with regard to capitalism, I've got some criticisms of the Amish. I don't like how they have puppy mills and stuff, but those guys, they get it. They live a very austere, very meaningful, social, spiritual, just a great kind of lifestyle that doesn't have this excess focus on consumerism or globalism that the rest of the country has, but they're very capitalist. They're all about, earning that dough. It's just they earn it for the right reasons. They don't earn it so they can have a nice little iPad. They don't earn it so they can have a flashy Gucci coat. They don't earn it so they can get hammered on the weekend. They earn it so they can take care of their family and have some extra revenue in order for like a rainy day sort of thing. That's what they work for. So think about what they do, and think of capitalism when you look at them. And then when you see flashy, rappers drinking Cristal or whatever, that's not so much capitalism so much as it is an entire generation, actually multiple generations, taught by the government and by the lens of our culture, which has shifted dramatically in a wrong direction, to behave in a way that's bad for society, and then they turn around and blame the free market for it. So I hope that answers the question. Let's see. Does knowledge make you happy? Oh, that's a fun one. What an interesting question. Never really thought about it. Well, here's my question in response to that question. Do people who like to go fishing, do they do that because they like the taste of fish? You can buy a fish, right? So for me, like for example, if there was a button in the room, and if I pushed it, I would be omniscient. I don't know if I'd push that button. For the same reason why somebody who likes to go fishing, they wouldn't necessarily push a magic button that gave them an endless supply of fish in their freezer. Because it's not about having it, it's about acquiring it. I don't like knowledge, I like learning. I like attaining information. There's a rush, there's a sense of enjoyment, there's a sense of fulfillment I get. So knowledge, I would say, does not make a person happy. Man, this ties in with the other two questions. Like I said, capitalism is a tool. Knowledge is a tool. Knowledge can make a person miserable or happy depending on how they use it and how they view it. And I absolutely love attaining knowledge. And I think most people, if they looked at it through the angle that I'm looking at it, and I think most people actually do, they would enjoy attaining knowledge. I think that that's something that is characteristic of a person. There's an immediate sense of gratification and of positive reinforcement when you learn something new and interesting. It's one of the reasons why we like to talk to each other. I mean, humans are very social creatures. Well, what are we always doing? Like all day, every day, constantly. What are you doing right now watching this video? You're exchanging information with someone. You asked me a question, and I'm answering it. That is in and of itself. It's funny, your question is about if knowledge makes me happy or makes a person happy. that in and of itself is a pursuit of knowledge, and so a pursuit of information. So, yeah, I absolutely enjoy the acquisition of information. I enjoy learning about the world. It's probably, in my opinion, it's the greatest pleasure there is. You know, food and drink and affection, those are all wonderful things. Social enjoyment, also absolutely terrific, and fun. All these things are fundamental to a person's enjoyment of life. But for me, there is no greater thrill than learning about the world, than uncovering information. It is just wonderful. But knowledge itself, that's neutral. That's just a tool. That's just something that we make use of. Yeah. So I hope that answers that question. That's all for me. Thanks. Like, subscribe, share. Keep asking questions. Bye.